well, that political divide as well. But of course, the big political divide remains the FDI. And now, with what happened just a short while ago, we are back to square one. Negotiators back to the drawing board. Parliament likely to be adjourned again tomorrow. Joining me tonight in an interview I did a short while ago is our newsmaker, Jaswant Singh, former Finance Minister and Defence Minister in the NDA government, and of course, senior BJP MP as well. Mr. Jaswant Singh, thank you very much for joining me tonight. You, of course, are amongst the senior statesmen of the BJP, you and Mr. L.K. Advani. Why is it and what is your feeling about the government charge that it is the BJP obduracy which is now blocking Parliament and its functioning?
Well, it's very flattering that you call me, or the adjective that you use, but do please for a moment reflect on two absolute facts or parts of parliamentary life. One is that whereas the government's duty is to legislate, the opposition's voice must always be heard. There's a second aspect. In the present situation, if you examine as to who has really been obstructing the parliament, I find that it's the Telanganites, or those that are troubled by the construction or the age of a dam between Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
So it's really the congressmen that are doing it. There's a third factor, and which worries me very greatly, that in the last 7 days, the Honourable Prime Minister hasn't found it fit to be in Parliament even one day. Now that he is the leader of the ruling UPA, he's the Prime Minister of the country. If he doesn't find it convenient to be present and lead the assembly out of the controversy, then who will?
Are you referring to
therefore, to charge the BJP is really stretching a point.
Are you referring to the fact, Mr. Jaswant Singh, that the Prime Minister made that statement that there will be no rollback of FDI and multi-brand retail at the Youth Congress Convention? Are you referring to the fact that even that Pranab Mukherjee is the person who attended the all-party meeting, not the Prime Minister, though of course Pranab Mukherjee has always been the government's troubleshooter?
It's not I'm not very good at fault finding, but I must point out that if the Prime Minister does not find it fit to respond to the concerns of the House inside the House, there is a meeting of all the parties to discuss this impasse and find a way out of it. The Prime Minister stays away from this meeting. Pranab Babu then says, I'll go and report to the Prime Minister. In the meeting, Mr. Advani, I think in an act of great statesmanship, to break the impasse, says, well, fine, if you won't roll back FDI, put it on a shelf, put it aside for the moment, and it can be, we can carry on with the proceedings of the House. No response is given to that by anybody in government. The Honourable Prime Minister instead chooses to go to a party forum and announce on that forum, which is really an announcement to the whole country, that I am not going to shift 1 inch from what I have said. It's either FDI or nothing. Now that really is not how a Prime Minister should lead the Parliament out of a controversy. I'm sorry to have to point out to the Prime Minister how he should function as a Prime Minister when the Parliament is seized of a controversy. We would have liked to have known in Parliament why is the Prime Minister so obstinate, so determined in the light of all the opposition that has come up from within his own party, his allies. Why is he so determined to carry on with this measure?
Mr. Jaswant Singh, if I can perhaps reverse that argument in a way, the government points out that this is a cabinet decision, that they're fully within their rights to take this as a policy decision, that when you talk about the obstinacy, that the government in fact accepted the BJP adjournment on black money, that was meant to be disrupted, that it's the BJP and the opposition which is going against the so-called rules of the game by disrupting the House on FDI.
Yeah, that's right. I think that is the point that the government is making. But if you examine the sequence of events, which should take me less than a minute to say, the government, the opposition, And I think the leader of the opposition and others, Honorable Shri Sharad Yadav, etc., they'd agreed, yes, let's start the discussion on, I think, price rise. It was afternoon. The price rise discussion was to start. And the impediment that then came was from Telangana and the dam, and they blocked the House. The discussion, therefore, got thwarted. There was a break. I think the House then adjourned for 2 days. And then in that gap of 2 days, or the break of 2 days, the government, the Prime Minister, chooses to bring in FDI. Why? Why was FDI so important now? The Prime Minister could have explained. Yes, it is vital for me to bring it on such and such occasion.
But
it's disingenuous to suggest that it's only the BJP or the opposition, because we had agreed, they are not wanting a discussion.
No, but
I'm afraid that's not correct.
Sir, the Prime Minister and the government's argument, of course, is that they will explain it if you let them on the floor of the House. How can they explain it when Parliament is disrupted?
My dear Sonia, it's you endlessly we go around it. It is the requirement of the leadership to get the House to function, stand up and get the House, bring the House in order by commanding the respect of the House. At least stand up and say. But if you are absent from the House, and I'm very sorry to have to say that the Prime Minister is the First Minister of government. If he says the House is too turbulent, I'm afraid I can't face it. Therefore, I can't explain my viewpoint. It's a pathetic argument. It's really a pathetic argument. And it saddens me to have to say this.
Strong words there by you, Mr. Jaswant Singh. Let me ask you, let me broaden this debate a bit to look at the whole issue of what's happened this time in Parliament. Even before the cabinet decision on FDI, we've been set for a stormy session. You made the point of Telangana MPs. But there was also that controversial decision by the BJP before Parliament began to boycott the Home Minister, Mr. Chidambaram. Now, you were part of the NDA government when George Fernandes was boycotted by the Congress. What do you feel about this whole politics of parliamentary boycotts, the degeneration of parliamentary opposition, as it were, by both sides?
I think we should reflect on it, because you're right. Your observation is valid. What are we reducing parliamentary opposition to? Are we reducing it simply to obstructionism, or flip the coin? Or is it that the governments of the day are not being responsive enough to the concerns of the opposition? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. I don't think what was done to my very dear friend and colleague, whom I have very high regard for, George, was at all acceptable. I have very high regard for the present Home Minister. We have worked together for many parliaments. Of course, it doesn't delight me, worry to have received such a treatment.
So have you voiced those views, Mr. Jaswant Singh? Are you isolated within the BJP with those views? Because that decision was taken, of course, by the BJP to boycott Mr. Chidambaram.
No, my party has known, they've known that I have certain views. I would be very uncomfortable if I didn't voice my views. But once the party, and which I do, but once the party takes a decision, well, then I go along with it.
Right.
That's how it is.
Right, Mr. Jaswant Singh, coming back to the point in which you have intimate knowledge of the time that NDA government tenure. And we see the Congress over the last 2 days make the point that the BJP note had originally come out FDI and multi-brand retail by the NDA government at a time you were finance minister. So the Congress has pointed out that isn't this hypocrisy that the BJP actually was not opposed to bringing in FDI into retail. The BJP is now opposing this because it doesn't want the Congress government to get credit for it, for the economic reform, for what they claim is the positive impact this will bring in.
No, I think that's a very strong word, Matt. I don't think there's any hypocrisy. I think in the the first mention that gets made of it is in 2004, when my late friend Murasoli Maran, who was then the Commerce Minister, and he had what in bureaucratic parlance is called floated a note. So a note was for consideration, but that was for 26% in FDI. I'm not going into the detail of it. But in 2009, also it is possible, some people have pointed out, that in the agenda for governance in 2004, there was some mention of FDI. I think governments will examine all kinds of situations. And an examination of a situation as a possibility ought not to be considered as synonymous with hypocrisy. Certainly not. And I think it would be mandatory on governments to examine situations, which NDA did. We did. I don't think we were a failure in the management of the country's economy. But FDI in 51% in multi-brand, I don't think that was ever considered.
No, but when you were finance minister, sir, you had also supported FDI in retail. Of course, not in the current form, but you had supported in some way or the other.
I don't know what I would have done if multi-brand had come at that stage, but we didn't consider it. I think there was opposition within the cabinet also. I don't remember. I don't want to be faulted on detail because it's some years back, and I really don't have the detailed recollection of it.
Mr. Jaswant Singh, finally, as we end really the debate on the larger issue of what kind of opposition, what kind of current parliamentary politics we are watching, the whole concept you've been seeing increasingly of people saying that there should be no work, no pay. Parliament is letting down India, Parliament disappointing India. Your final views on that, sir?
So I have difficulties because personally I believe that what the members of Parliament receive as remuneration is not pay. The principle behind remunerating members of Parliament was, at least that was the concept, that when members of Parliament from all over the country, there would be members that would come from the deepest south, from northeast, and they would of course require a certain compensation as loss of their time. This would not really pay. And I find it personally demeaning for it to be termed pay. Actually, personally, and I have no difficulty in saying it, we are required to sign some kind of an attendance register. I'm not a daily labor to sign an attendance register, but that sadly has become the norm. And therefore to call it as pay and therefore members of Parliament should not, or take away the bloody money. That's not the point at all. That's only one superficial part of it.
Right.
Please reflect on the deeper malaise that seems to have afflicted us all.